You are lying in bed at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, running through tomorrow's problems one more time, even though you have already run through them 15 times tonight. Your body's exhausted. Your mind will not stop. You check the time, do the math on how many hours of sleep you have left, and somehow that math only makes it worse. This particular kind of misery, wide awake and worried in the dark, feels like something that has always existed, a permanent feature of being human. The evidence says otherwise. In 2015, neuroscientist Jerome Siegel of UCLA led a landmark study tracking the sleep of the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Samson in Bolivia, three hunter-gatherer and forager horticulturalist groups living without electricity or modern schedules. Using wrist monitors to record actual sleep patterns over hundreds of nights, Siegel's team found something that surprised a lot of sleep researchers. These groups slept on average less than 7 hours a night, often less than many stressed modern adults. But almost none of them reported anything resembling chronic insomnia. There was no local word in some of these languages for the specific experience of lying awake, unable to sleep, worrying about tomorrow. That gap is strange once you sit with it. Less total sleep, but almost no complaints about the specific misery so many modern people describe. Something about the structure of their nights was doing a different job than the structure of yours. Part of the answer may be architectural, not psychological. Historian Roger Ekirch of Virginia Tech spent years digging through pre-industrial diaries, court records, and medical texts across Europe, and found repeated references to something modern sleep had quietly erased. Before artificial light reshaped the night, many people slept in two segments. A first sleep beginning shortly after dark, then a period of quiet waking in the middle of the night lasting an hour or more, then a second sleep until morning. Ekirch found that this waking period was not treated as a problem to fix. People used it to pray, think, talk quietly with a partner, or simply lie in the dark undisturbed before drifting back into a second block of sleep. The wakefulness itself was not the enemy. It was just part of the night. Compare that to what happens now. You wake at 2 in the morning, and your first assumption is that something has gone wrong, that you are failing at sleep, that the clock is now working against you. Ekirch's research suggests that assumption itself may be a relatively recent invention, built on the expectation of one unbroken block of sleep that electric light made both possible and, in a strange way, mandatory. Light itself turns out to be a major part of the story. In 2017, physiologist Kenneth Wright of the University of Colorado Boulder ran a study sending groups of campers into the wilderness for a week with no phones, flashlights, or artificial light of any kind, only natural sunlight and darkness. Wright's team measured melatonin, the hormone that signals the body it is time to sleep, before and during the trip. Within just a few days, the campers' melatonin release shifted to align almost exactly with sunset, and their bodies began winding down and waking up far closer to the actual rhythm of the sun. Participants reported falling asleep faster and feeling calmer in the evening hours, without trying to change anything except the light around them. A brain that is still being told it is daytime by a phone screen or an overhead light at 11 at night is a brain that has not yet been given permission to power down, worry included. Structure was not the only piece missing from the picture. Anthropologist Carol Worthman of Emory University spent decades studying what she calls the sleep ecology of traditional societies, meaning not just how long people slept, but the physical and social environment they slept inside. Worthman's research across multiple hunter-gatherer and small-scale societies found a consistent pattern. People rarely slept alone. Sleeping arrangements were communal, often multiple family members or even multiple families sharing one enclosed space, with a fire nearby and the sounds of other people breathing close by through the night. Worthman argued that this constant physical presence of other bodies functioned as a kind of ongoing safety signal to the nervous system, reducing the vigilance a solitary sleeper's brain has to maintain. Picture what that actually felt like. Not silence, not a sealed bedroom with a single body inside it, a shared space with the low sound of breathing, an occasional shift of weight, a fire settling into embers, other people close enough to touch if something felt wrong. A racing mind trying to solve tomorrow's problems alone in the dark had far less room to spiral when tomorrow's problems were, in a very literal sense, being handled by more than one person a few feet away. Biological anthropologist David Samson, now at the University of Toronto, Mississauga, took this question directly into the field. Samson fitted Hadza adults with actigraphy devices, the same wrist sensors used in modern sleep labs, and tracked their actual sleep across many nights in camp. His data showed something important. Hadza's sleep was often fragmented, broken into shorter stretches, punctuated by brief waking periods through the night, not one long, uninterrupted block. Yet despite that fragmentation, Hadza participants did not describe their sleep as poor and showed none of the anxious, ruminating wakefulness so common in clinical insomnia. Fragmented was not the same thing as distressed. Samson has proposed that this fragmented pattern may not be a flaw at all, but a feature carried forward from a time when staying briefly alert through the night, checking on a fire, listening for a predator, shifting position beside a sleeping child, actually mattered for survival. A body that wakes several times a night but returns to sleep easily each time, without spiraling into worry, is arguably working exactly as it evolved to. It is the spiraling, not the waking, that appears to be the newer and more troublesome addition. That reframes the entire modern conversation around sleep. Millions of people now measure their sleep with apps, chase a single unbroken 8-hour block as the only acceptable outcome, and treat any nighttime waking as evidence that something is broken. But if Ekirch, Worthman, and Samson are right, waking briefly in the night was never the anomaly. What was missing from that ancient picture was the isolation, the glowing screen, and the mental to-do list waiting the moment your eyes opened in the dark. Here is the twist worth sitting with. Modern sleep culture treats any waking period during the night as a malfunction, something to fix with a pill, an app, or sheer willpower. But the anthropological record suggests fragmented sleep with calm, unworried waking periods may actually be the older, more typical human pattern. What changed was not how much your body wakes up at night. What changed is what waking up now means. Alone in a sealed room, with nothing but your own thoughts and a mental list of unresolved problems, a brief natural waking period becomes something closer to a trap. The waking was never the problem. The isolation and the tasked, anxious mind filling that waking time might be. You are lying in bed at 2 in the morning again, and this time you notice something different about it. Somewhere behind your racing thoughts is a much older, much calmer version of this exact moment. A body waking briefly in the night beside other breathing bodies, a fire settling into coals, no phone, no tomorrow's inbox, nothing urgent enough to chase away the quiet. The waking itself was never the enemy. It was always going to happen, night after night, for as long as humans have slept. What filled that waking, silence, and closeness for your ancestors, a glowing screen, and an unfinished to-do list for you, is where the real difference seems to live. If stories like this one make you see your own everyday life differently, hit subscribe. A new story from the deep past goes up every week.